Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Jess. So Bitcoin has finally broken out of its 3-month long downtrend, and over the last couple of days has shot right up to $65,000. But we are rapidly losing bullish momentum, and if the price drops any further, we are at a real risk of seeing $60,000 all over again. So let's dive into today's video to talk about the key levels that you need to be looking out for in terms of bullish and bearish validation and what the future price action should look like. Before we get into all that though, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Wednesday and Saturday, and ring that notification button so you never miss an episode. If you want even more content, be sure to check out the free Telegram channel over here to get daily Bitcoin analysis, and the VIP channel to get access to my personal trades, at least 3 of them a week, fully justified with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. Righty guys, so before we dive into any sort of future potential scenarios, as always, let's start off by covering what on earth has happened in the last couple of days. So taking a look here on the 4-hour time frame, we can see that from that last video, we did end up breaking out of the downtrend, so that's great, hooray, but we haven't exactly done the full move that we were really expecting in that very last video. So the key target here in terms of this whole move upwards that was going to, trigger a macro flip to the bullish case scenario was a break of $67,000, right? So that's our key resistance here that we're really looking to break above, because as we can see, that is that trigger point, right? It is the midline of this giant parallel channel that we've been in for months and months, and breaking above the midline tells us that, first of all, we've cracked support, so we've done a support resistance flip, and that we should now be targeting the upper ranges of these channels. So that means $73,000, and that means potentially breaking above the channel and finally going back into price discovery, right? So we did get some of that bullish price action, right? So we had the major RSI downtrend on the daily chart. If we zoom out onto a daily chart, we had that breakout of that huge RSI downtrend. So massive shift in momentum that took us through this breakout over here, right? Broke out of this massive 3-month long downtrend, but we are struggling. So Bitcoin is falling before it's even learning to run, and we are stumbling around this POC level, the point of control on the VRPV, or this massive level of volume at $65,000. So let's dive into the short time frame to start off with and talk about these key levels here and what the price action is really telling us on these short time frames. Before we get into any more analysis, guys, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor, Bitunix. Bitunix is an emerging cryptocurrency exchange committed to providing you with a secure, convenient, and highly functional trading and investment platform. Available across all countries as a non-KYC exchange, get global access to over 150 trading pairs with minimal fees on both spot and futures contracts. Join today to get $5,500 in sign-up rewards and get 15% off all of your trading fees by signing up using the link in my bio or by using the code 1GG3 when you create your account. I know a lot of you guys, especially in the US and the UK, have been really struggling to find an exchange that has low fees and actually has leverage trading available. So hopefully Bitunix sorts out a lot of that problem for you guys, and it is a very easy to use exchange. So I definitely recommend checking out if you haven't already. Now, moving back into the charts here. This is a 1-hour chart that has a fair bit to talk about. So naturally, obviously, we can see it's testing the support that I've drawn in. It's not looking particularly good just yet, but it's not looking terrible. So let's go into all of it and what's happened. So over the last couple of days, or the last day or so, we did have a fair bit of chop. So within this sideways little range here between $62,800 to $65,000, we did go sideways a fair bit, and there was a fair bit of volatility, but for a moment there we were looking actually very strong. So obviously we broke out of the downtrend and we moved right up to $64,500. We found a local base of support. We went down to test this local base of support. You guys can see it on the VRPV. So there's this like little volume gap here, right? So that's acting as our base of support, because falling below that would be a bearish trigger. So we have a support there, went back down to test it. So that's between $62,800 to $62,300, and then moved right up to test a new high at $65,500. Now, if you guys remember the macro charts from any of my other videos, moving on to the weekly, we know 65.5 is a key level of resistance. So we have 67 in terms of that channel, right? In terms of moving to the upper ranges of that channel and moving to $73,000. But in terms of the weekly chart and the macro charts, 65 is a huge macro bullish trigger, because we know $65,000 was the previous weekly candle close for the all-time high in 2021. So huge level of resistance there, and we can see as soon as we tested 65.5, we had a really rapid rejection. So that rejection took us right down again to test our base of support. We had on the RSI, we had that massive drop in momentum. We had the bearish divergence as well that was telling us we were probably going to reject from 65.5. We were approaching it from a position of weakness. We had a show of increased selling pressure as well, but we were holding sideways. So we had some bearish absorption. So things were looking good. We were bouncing on the base of support, but after this next move upwards, we were unable to break out of this downtrend. And then in our subsequent rally, we weren't able to break past that prior high, right? So that head. And now we formed a lower high. So I'm pretty sure you guys know what this looks like, right? It looks like a head and shoulders pattern. And that is typically bearish. And, you know, we have confirmation on the RSI. We are in a momentum downtrend. We are testing that neckline of support right now. So Bitcoin on the short time frame is in a pretty critical level. It isn't looking the best. However, we haven't gotten full bearish confirmation yet. So we have the signs. We know that there is a strong likelihood that on the short time frame we do correct, but we need confirmation before we take any sort of action. So if you guys were going to take a short right now, that would be a little bit silly, because the first thing we need to see in order to confirm that move, so broken below that key support level, right? So $62,800 lost, but we have sell side liquidity and that base of that range of support down here at $62,300, and we have not lost that level quite yet. As you guys can see, we are moving right down to that sell side liquidity. We haven't closed below it, and it looks like we are trying to bounce. So in terms of bearish confirmation, that is what we're looking for. And now let's talk about targets. So if we were going to see this bearish move and this, you know, this flush downwards, what kind of price targets should we be looking for? So the measured move of the head and shoulders pattern is from the neckline to the head, right? So that takes us from the breakdown point of the actual support itself at 62.8 to $60,000, right? So we'd be retesting macro support. What we might also see though is a move to test the trend line, right? And then a bounce to $67,000, right? So those are two key scenarios there in terms of the bearish case, right? So either we test a macro support at $60,000 or we test a macro support that was our prior, you know, massive downtrending resistance, right? So we have a massive resistance to support flip of this downtrend over here, and we bounce on $61,500 instead. So those are two main targets over there. We do have smaller levels of support on the short time frame as well that might act as a position where we'll bounce. So if we zoom in onto the 1 hour chart and pull up the VRPV, we can see that $61,700 is another small level of support. So maybe if we do get a breakdown, we will move to test the trend line with horizontal confluence at $61,700 and then bounce back upwards. And then below that, there's really just that $60,000 level. So there we go. That is the bearish case scenario, potentially the more likely scenario right now, but it's not confirmed. So let's talk about the bullish case scenario. So what would invalidate this pattern? What will tell us that we are going to go upwards and continue that upwards trajectory? So while we hold the sell side liquidity level down here at $62,300, the bullish case scenario is still intact. So all we'd really need to see in terms of invalidating this pattern here would literally just be a bounce on the sell side liquidity level, because we've rejected the pattern, right? We've moved back above the neckline of the head and shoulders pattern. And you know, we aren't going downwards. So immediately that should tell you we aren't going to see this correction, because once that pattern has formed and hasn't been fulfilled, we know it's invalidated. The price is going to continue to consolidate sideways within this $62,800 to $64,300 range. Now, in terms of the bullish case and in terms of like a continued move upwards, the very first thing that we're looking for is a break above that little level of resistance. You can see it on the VRPV, this gap, and a move to fill that gap and to retrace to our local high. So that's $65.5 thousand level. Now, as you guys already know, because I just spoke about it a couple minutes ago, that $65.5 thousand level is the base of our macro resistance over here. So 65 to that $69,000 level, we know is that macro resistance range. So moving above $65,000 tells us we're moving back into the macro resistance, and we should continue to consolidate between 65.5 and that $69,000 level. So it tells us that we have a very high likelihood upon breaking over 65.5 to breaking above the midline of our parallel channel and moving to these upper ranges over here. And this takes us to our macro discussion, guys, because if we go out into the daily chart, if we're testing $69,000 or $73,000, either one of those macro levels of resistance in the higher ranges of this parallel channel, that will be the first time that we are testing those levels from a position of strength rather than weakness. Just like, as I said in my very last video, right? This is the first time that we'll be testing it outside of this momentum downtrend, right? So we are testing it from a position of increased buying pressure, increased strength, and increased momentum. So it tells us that we have a very high likelihood of breaking above those upper levels of resistance if we do test them. And that, on the macro scale, suggests, you know, a retracement to 73 and a reposition in price discovery. So there you have it, guys. So it's really everything that might happen in terms of the current price action and what it's telling us. So in the worst case scenario, even on the short time frame, sure, it looks bad, but if we zoom out and talk about what's actually, you know, going to happen in that worst case scenario here, is still a retracement to a macro high and a continuation upwards, right? Even if we don't go to $60,000, we test the downtrend and we move upwards, again, another higher high on the macro charts and another suggestion of a continuation upwards. So sure, the short time frame looks like it might potentially be a little bit bearish. The overall charts in terms of the higher time frame and a potential of a move to 67 and above, still looking very high, still looking very, very good. The only way that the macro bullish scenario is invalidated is if we lose $60,000 as a base of support, retrace back down to 57 and, you know, just completely invalidate this move upwards. But we're not seeing any signs of that just yet. Alrighty, guys, that is it for the analysis I have for you today. If you enjoyed the video or you learned something, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel down below. If you want even more content, I do have a free Telegram channel where you guys can get daily Bitcoin updates as well as crypto and economic news. If you're interested in my VIP channel, you can check out more details over here. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trade setups, at least 3 of them a week, detailed with justifications, exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. Hope you guys have a really great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye!